Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Nice to see you today. Sorry that my nose is a little bit clogged up, but that's the story of my life. Welcome to How to Rock Astrology. We're continuing our session today, reading from Pluto, The Evolutionary Journey of the Soul, Volume 1 by Jeff Green. We're continuing in Chapter 1 of the book, where Jeff Green goes into the details about how he determines Pluto's effects and influences and significations of the soul's evolutionary journey in the natal chart. Right now in particular, we've been talking a little bit about the kind of like the philosophical edge of Pluto, how it kind of functions cosmically, metaphysically. Now we are going to be reading and listening to how the nodes, the axis of the north and south nodes of the moon, relates to and influence and reflect on the soul's evolutionary place in the evolution of the soul. So this is the next chapter called Pluto and the Nodal Axis. As usual, folks, this is a live stream, so if you're watching, if you want to ask any questions, make any comments, I'll try to speak to them as best I can. Going on in our discussion, Jeff Green continues. Most astrologers have learned that the south node of the moon represents a composite of issues, i.e., value systems, beliefs, needs, and so forth from the past that are relied upon or gravitated to in this life. The Vedic tradition has much to say about Ketu as this grip, Ketu, the south node, as this sort of past life conception glove, which we cannot interact with the world without in a certain way. I mean, that's just my own metaphorical figure, but the figure of Ketu, if you ever want to read about that, says a lot about the south node axis and what it means to the north node. Jeff Green continues. We have also learned that the south node of the moon represents lessons to be learned in this life. A few professional astrologers insist that this correlation is wrong, that the north node is the past and the south node is the future. Despite the insistence of these few, historical observations over centuries validate the correlation of the south node with the past and the north node with the future. Jeff Green says, based on my own observations over many years and reading thousands of charts, history seems to be correct. Meditate on these symbols in your own chart and then reflect on your own life, and I think this correlation will be borne out. The relationship between the north and south nodes and Pluto is very important. We have correlated Pluto to desires based on evolutionary factors. The natal position of Pluto describes the pre-existing patterns and identity association that the individual naturally gravitates to in this life. The south node describes, from a prior life point of view, the mode of operation that allowed the individual to actualize or fulfill the desires or intentions described in the natal position of Pluto. A simple example using the 9th house Pluto discussed earlier will illustrate this point. And we're going to see a sample chart here. I should like to note that in Vedic astrology, I'm a Tropical Vedic astrologer, and there's actually, in my conception, bridging Jeff Green's with the Tropical Vedic astrology sense. It is suggested in the Vedic that the north node itself, being in its house and sign, is kind of like what Pluto is in Jeff Green's sense. And the Lord of the North Node is the ambassador, that which grounds and gets what the North Node wants. Or we're talking about the South Node right here, so I should say the South Node, as well as Mars. I'll make my own rendition of this whole thing, but Mars and the dispositor of the South Node get the needs of the South Node and the desire of the South Node. What Jeffrey Wolf Green is suggesting is that whatever that need is, whatever that South Node desire is, that its dispositor gets, is also a foundation, a need, a energy bank, which helps to, which a vessel through which we can get the desires implied by Pluto's house position. Of course, Jeff Wolf's going to go on to say then that the North Node helps us to get to Pluto's polarity point, the opposite point of Pluto. In the end, I'm probably going to end up saying that the South Node dispositor helps us attain the desires of the South Node, and the South Node helps us to attain desires of Pluto's natal point, while the dispositor of the North Node helps us to attain the North Node's needs, which in turn helps us to have a vessel, an evolutionary impetus, a framework, a consciousness which pulls us towards, constructively, non-cataclysmically, towards the evolutionary desires implied by Pluto's opposite point. Very beautiful, deep reflection. A simple example using the 9th house Pluto discussed earlier will illustrate this point. So we're going to look at an example chart here. This is chart 1. Basically, chart 2 is just the flip of it. But essentially, we can see Pluto here is in the 9th house. And we have K2 in the 8th house. Is that right? Sorry, that's the 7th house. I understand. I see where this is at. So K2 is in the 7th house and Pluto is in the 9th house. My brain had a fumble moment for a second there. So, a simple example using the 9th house Pluto discussed earlier will illustrate this point. And let's put the South Node in the 7th house. The individual's desire to understand his or her life in a larger cosmological context, that's the 9th house emphasis, and this would be the essence of the life. With the South Node in the 7th house, how would we expect the person to actualize or fulfill that desire? From a prior life point of view, the mode of operation would have led to the initiation of many kinds of relationships, 7th house things, through which the individual was seeking the knowledge implied by the 9th house Pluto. Relationships would be typically formed with others who could serve as teachers to the individual, for better or worse, to the experience of the person. These prior patterns imply a dependency on that kind of orientation coming into this life, a dependency on 7th house things. Thus, the person would tend to draw, through relationships, others to them, who would attempt to convince or convert that person to their points of view. In this way, the individual would have collected a variety of teachings from a variety of people. Which one is right? Which one is wrong? Because this is, of course, the Pluto in the 9th house is using the 7th, using the varieties of people to gain it's used to using the 7th house to gain Pluto's desires and needs in the 9th house. Which person is right? Which person is wrong? Is one more right than the other? Are they all wrong? These are questions this person might now be asking. In this case, the North Node, the mode of operation would be in the 1st house, right? So, just to show again, This is the first house of this chart, where this north node would be. Pluto in the ninth, acting and operating and engaging the third house. So that the third house is the polarity point, and the north node is the third house is going to work in cohesion with the north node in the first house in order to attain the actualization point, the third house things, which would fulfill the ninth house desires by its axial cohesion, to use an interesting evolutionary phrase. So, with that being said, in this case, the north node, the mode of operation would be in the first house, and Pluto's polarity point would be in the third house, as we've just seen. What are the evolutionary lessons here? Simply stated, the individual would acknowledge the relativity of varying points of view. Yet, by using the mode of operation symbolized by the first house north node, they would learn to develop his or her own voice, their own identity, their own vision, own knowledge, and would learn to ask and answer questions from within the self, not just from trying to see other people's inner opinions. This transformation would then progressively, yet totally, change the approach and orientation to relationships. Rather than depending on teacher-type relationships, ninth house teachers, they might subconsciously want to become the teacher, third house active, being a part of it. Further down the road, the individual would desire a situation of equality in a relationship. Both partners would then be simultaneously student and teacher to each other by encouraging mutual independence in each. Very insightful stuff by Jeffrey Wolf Green. Now let's take the same ninth house Pluto and put the south node in the first house. The polarity of Pluto remains in the third house. So this is just kind of trying to show, this is Jeff Green doing a little bit of fun acrobatics to show the nature of the actualization of this Pluto in the ninth house. We're doing an example now where the north node is in the seventh house, which means the person is actually used to dealing with life through the first house. South node, past, K2, being in the first house. Now the evolutionary vessel lies in the seventh house. And the seventh house is the reaffirming way with which to reach into the desires implied by Pluto's third house. Whereas the south node in the first house, now the first house, the self, not others, but the self, is the old past pattern, which helps to gain Pluto's needs in the ninth house, but can also be limiting, as we're going to see. So, the polarity of Pluto remains in the third house, and the north node is in the first house. The north node is now in the seventh house. The mode of operation to actualize or fulfill the evolutionary intent of Pluto is the seventh house north node. It's the mode of operation to actualize or fulfill the evolutionary intent of Pluto is the seventh house north node. The bottom line is still the ninth house Pluto and the desire for the individual to understand him or herself in a larger cosmological context, the ninth house desire. From a prior life point of view, the individual fulfilled that desire by maintaining independence and freedom from involvement in relationships in order to initiate whatever experiences that he or she deemed necessary in order to fulfill the desire for cosmological knowledge. Wow. The individual was dependent only upon the self. South node in the first house. They would come into this life with the ability to ask and answer his or her own questions. It is from exactly this orientation that the evolutionary limitations and intentions are reflected. Yes, the individual here is learning the lessons of intellectual and philosophical beliefs, symbolized by the third house polarity point of the ninth house Pluto. Yes, the individual is destined to experience intellectual or philosophical confrontations with others in order for this lesson to occur. It's the third house emphasis. How will this lesson occur specifically? Through the seventh house north node. The soul of this individual would desire and need to be in relationships in this life. The individual will also be required to give to others and must learn how to listen to other people in order to understand and identify another's reality as it exists for them. It's the north node in the seventh house. In this way, they will be giving to another what is needed from the other's point of view. It's the north node in the seventh, as well as the polarity point of Pluto in the third house. That's a double interpretation. Versus giving to others from the individual's own reality. That's the south node in the first house with ninth house Pluto. Commonly, this individual, when disposed to be involved with people at all, they form a prior life point of view, which would have been the teacher. They would have needed to be perceived by others as a leader, as special, because of the knowledge that the individual presents. It's the ninth house Pluto, it's the south node in the first house. So the Pluto is this guru, teacher of cultural larger context to others through themselves, through them knowing that they are this teacher, imparting impersonally unto others. Because Pluto's third house polarity point must lead to philosophical or intellectual confrontation in order to expose the limitations of the individual's own belief structure, the seventh house north node creates a mode of operation through which the individual will also be taught by other key individuals on a cyclical basis throughout life. So it's not just them being the teacher, the expounder of knowledge. It's this painful thing where they're not used to dealing with someone else's authority of knowledge on a subject that they consider themselves to have once been a teacher of. But they gotta fit that new vessel, man. Gradually, through confrontations, the individual will learn that he or she can learn from others. In addition, the individual will come to realize that he or she must learn how to be in relationships as an equal, that relationships are essential to his or her evolutionary growth. With this understanding, the individual will also realize, just as the person with the south node in the seventh house did, that equality will occur through encouraging the independent self-actualization of the partner. Cool, because the axis is on the first and seventh axis. The south and north nodes thus correlate to the modes of operation that help the individual fulfill the evolutionary necessities and desires. The ninth house Pluto was used in both examples. Yet the modes of operation, past and present, needed to fulfill those ninth house desires were diametrically opposed. This principle can be applied to all combinations of Pluto and the nodal axis. Wouldn't it be wonderful to get a personal reading of that sort from Jeffrey Wolf Green? The next principle that we need to consider is this. What signs and houses do the planetary rulers of the south and north node occupy? It's like I was saying at the beginning of this video. the Vedic emphasis on the dispositors of the North and South Node. The planetary rulers of the nodes are the planets that rule the sign that each node is in, i.e., with the South Node in Libra, the ruler would be Venus, for example. The house and sign position of each planetary ruler of the nodes act as facilitators that the individual has either used to develop the mode of operation from in the past, or to develop the mode of operation relative to the evolutionary intent in this life. Here's an example that Jeff Wolf gives us. I love these great examples that he gives us. At some point, I'm going to show the sample chart here. So here's an example. Say the 9th house Pluto is in Leo. The South Node is in Gemini in the 7th house. So here we have the chart, obviously, of a Sagittarius. If the 9th house Pluto is in Leo, the South Node is in Gemini in the 7th house. Just to show you guys. Yeah, I'll show you in a second. I should show you right here, I guess. What the heck. Maybe I'll even, for its own sake, let's just do a quick little... I'm just going to draw in these symbols here. Gemini. Okay, folks, just to give you a little view of what's going on here. We have here the chart of a Sagittarius rising. Pluto is in the 9th house in Leo. The South Node is in Gemini, the 7th house, which is diametrically opposed to the North Node the North Node in Sagittarius. It's interesting that the North Node in Sagittarius has a certain relationship with Pluto as the 9th, in the 9th house. So, the North Node is in Sagittarius in the 1st house. An important point of this chart that I forgot to mention, obviously, that I neglected to mention, is that the ruler of Gemini, I'm going to give this to you guys in the way that Jeffrey Wolf has it described. Sorry about that. Got it clear now. The 9th house Pluto in Leo. South Node in Gemini in the 7th house. Now the ruler of Gemini, it's Mercury, is in Pisces in the 4th house. So that's this Mercury here in Pisces. So obviously the 7th house Lord, the ruler of the 7th house, where that South Node is, needs to express itself through Pisces and through the 4th house of Sagittarius. Therefore, that 7th house is going to interact in a very 4th house way. The people that are in relationship, that are the necessary holders of the vessel of this evolutionary intent or this evolutionary body, those people in the 7th house of this person are also intricately related to the emotional foundation this person has, because that Mercury is in the 4th house in Pisces. Now, on the other hand, the North Node is in Sagittarius in the 1st house, and the ruler of Sagittarius, that being Jupiter, is in Scorpio in the 12th house. I see what's going on. Here we have Jupiter in the 12th house in Scorpio, and the North Node is in Sagittarius in the Ascendant, the 1st house, which means that the evolutionary intent, the mode of operation through which this person can cultivate the necessary tools, resources, and people and consciousness through which to to break free and to realize one's own intent and purpose and capacity in their own evolutionary schema. That first house of Sagittarius, where the North Node is, finds and discerns and generates itself and stands on the 12th house, on Jupiter in the 12th house in Scorpio. Therefore, we can say that when they act through themselves, they also do that with a 12th house conception, with a past life, past action, transcendental state of mind. Certainly a mystical state of mind. This North Node has to be activated by some kind of interpenetration of past life karma, dharma, and meditative trance-like qualities, which will even relate in a funny way to the 4th house Mercury. Let's see how. Keeping in mind what has already been said about Pluto in the 9th house, relative to the South Node in the 7th. So how would Mercury in Pisces facilitate the mode of operation implied in the 7th house South Node of Gemini? So the first thing we're going to do is talk about how, considering what that South Node in the 7th house means to the intent of Pluto, what does it mean that that South Node is in Gemini? And as Jeffrey Wolf has asked, how would Mercury in Pisces in the 4th house facilitate the mode of operation implied in the 7th house South Node in Gemini? Gemini being the 7th house here. Well, it would imply that the individual's teachers were his or her parents in the early environment, and that the individual was extremely sensitive or impressionable to the impact of the parents' belief systems. For self-consistency and security reasons, it's the 4th house relative to the 9th house Pluto. The individual may have drawn partners, 7th house, who reflected the parents' belief system. It's the Mercury in Pisces. It's the 7th lord of Gemini, the 7th lord Mercury, being in the 4th house of Pisces. Thus, the individual did not know what else to believe or how to think independently. So, he or she took on the parents' beliefs because they reflected the individual's own desire to understand him or herself in a cosmological context. The individual may, in turn, pass along these teachings to his or her own children. With the South Node in Gemini, the individual will normally have a tremendous thirst for different ideas and experiences. Yet, in this case, the 9th house Pluto could have created a situation in which the individual denied the relevancy or legitimacy of any other point of view but his or her own, these being an extension of the parents' views, and later on a partner's or mate's beliefs. The threat of other points of view would undermine the security structures and self-image. 4th house Mercury in Pisces. Pisces being the debilitation point of Mercury. Yet, with the South Node in Gemini in the 7th house, the individual would naturally attract others who did have other points of view. So although the individual would attempt denial, he or she would take in this information on a subconscious level. There would be an awareness of something more than the beliefs taken on from the parents and mate. This awareness from the prior life point of view sets up this life. The North Node is in the 1st house in Sagittarius. The polarity point of Pluto is in the 3rd house. The planet ruling the North Node is in Scorpio in the 12th house, that being Jupiter, the first lord of the chart. Simply stated, the individual in this life would most likely choose parents who attempted to lay their beliefs upon the child. The child progressively would feel suffocated by those beliefs and would not feel that the parents truly understood their individual needs. The child would progressively withdraw. It's the Mercury and Pisces in the 4th. They would withdraw into him or herself in order to begin the lesson of independence. It's North Node in the 1st house in Sagittarius with Jupiter in the 12th house in Scorpio. By emotionally withdrawing, the individual would also be learning internal security. It's the Mercury in the 4th house Pisces through 1st house polarity of North Node in Sagittarius. Whoa. That was a mouthful. Progressively, as the individual matured, a personal vision, voice, and independence would develop, which would lead to an evolutionary consequence that would allow the individual to answer and ask his or her own questions. Through philosophical or intellectual confrontation, initially with the parents, the person would not only learn the relativity of beliefs, but also, especially through meditation, Jupiter and Scorpio in the 12th house, they would learn the essential unity of all cosmological, metaphysical, or religious systems through their experience, isolated, internal, in 12th house experiences. The 12th house Jupiter in Scorpio would progressively dissolve all the old barriers separating one system from another, showing the essential unity of all of them. With the North Node in Sagittarius, with the South Node in Gemini, with the North Node in Sagittarius and the South Node in Gemini, the individual would see and experience this truth everywhere, mutable, all the time. The person would also commit to one system that he or she felt most drawn to intuitively because of a natural resonance with it. With Jupiter in Scorpio in the 12th house, this system would have to be experienced. It would have to offer techniques and methods through which the individual could directly experience the truth of the conceptual framework being utilized by the metaphysical or spiritual system. In this way, the individual would learn to discriminate true teachings and teachers from false teachings and teachers, truth or revelation versus delusion or fiction. The individual would learn how to relate with others. It's the South Node in Gemini, Pluto polarity point in the 3rd house, at whatever level of reality they were coming from, and would give to them that which they needed. The individual would be in a partnership that was equal and that encouraged freedom and independence, yet valued commitment. This transformed individual would now encourage independence and respect the individuality of his or her own children. Wonderful. It's a very, like that whole 3-layered onion dip of the cosmological intent and purpose and evolutionary intent and purpose of the soul. It's very all-encompassing, and this is the basic framework of Jeff Green's whole work, basically. Now, these basic principles, correlating the natal position of Pluto with its polarity point, the North and South nodes as modes of operation, the planetary rulers of the nodes as facilitators to the modes of operation. These all constitute the main karmic / evolutionary dynamics in the birth chart. This dynamic will serve as the bottom line, the foundation that gives meaning to every other factor in the birth chart. Every other factor in the chart can be related to this dynamic and given new meaning relative to their contributing evolutionary roles implied in this main evolutionary karmic dynamic. It's really just an incredible synthesis being done by Jeffrey Wolf Green here. This is Jeffrey Wolf Green's whole thing wrapped up in a pretty little bow. At least in terms of the natal chart and the interactions, the main evolutionary themes as they might express themselves in cosmologically in reality. The places and sign interactions are beautifully displayed here in this example. But there's still lots to know and lots to learn. In the next episode, we are going to be hearing what Jeff Wolf Green says about Pluto in aspect to the nodal aspects, to the nodal axis. What does it mean when it's square? What does it mean when it's right beside? What does it mean when the nodal axis is ahead or behind the Pluto point? That's what we're going to be learning in our next episode. So I hope you guys enjoy that. I'm just noticing my friend Hollywood Snow Bunny is enjoying my hair. I appreciate hearing that, my friend. This is a live stream, folks, so whenever you make a comment, I'll do my best to speak to it. Oh, Hollywood Snow Bunny, thank you. A galaxy of beauty and charms. You were too damn sweet. Thank you so much for watching. And to everybody watching live as well. I always appreciate hanging out with you guys. Now I'm going to blast a little bit of my funky life juice. I got a hippie shake thing happening here. And when I come right back, in probably about like 5 minutes, we are going to continue talking about Pluto in aspect to the nodal axis. See you guys.